Hello everyone, I am back on X-Plane-10 mobile. So today we'll be going to be flying from KORF, that's Norfolk, Virginia, Norfolk International Airport, to MCO, McCarran International, down in Orlando. It's going to be a rather interesting flight here, especially towards the end. Also going to be doing a cold and dark startup from the MD-80. Yes, we're flying the MD-80, and it took me a very, very long time to remember, because I have not flown the MD-80 in X-Plane-10 mobile here in a very, very long time. So quick little 2 times normal speed here, the flight route. I had to start over once because I put in as you probably saw there, a waypoint that's over in Spain. So yep. This was also on the massive multiplayer online MMO setting. Yeah, and it turns out at the end of the flight here, yeah, you can see I caught myself there. There's another llama. There's 2 llamas in the database, one in Florida and one, or excuse me, that's probably Georgia. And then the UK there, so almost had to restart flight planning, which would have not been okay. But yeah, towards the end of this flight, I was going faster than what SimBrief wanted me to, and well, I almost overshot the airport. The other thing about SimBrief is it wanted me to land at 18 right. And as you can see here, I mistakenly thought it gave me the waypoint. What was that last waypoint there? Knobs. Okay. So Knobs was the last thing from SimBrief. And as you can see, I'm actually lining up for, what was that? That's 3-5 right? Instead of 18 right. So that's the 3517 or 0117. I can't remember too well, but ultimately I set up my own flight route into 01 right instead of 18 right, to the complete opposite side of the airport. And towards the end, well, you'll see, I had to do some quick thinking, vectoring on my own. Right, okay, into the cockpit here, and right, here's where I start going, oh crap, where's the battery switch? My problem with X-Plane-10 mobile right now is none of the graphics are very good, none of the textures are very good with the planes here. As you can see, I found the battery switch there, and unlike the 737, I was expecting the aircraft to come a little bit more alive. So I was just going like, okay, what's wrong here, you know? And I was like, oh, look at that. We have the warning lights on about what is off and what needs to go on, which is not accurate, in my opinion. So then I was like, all right, now I gotta get the APU started. I did a quick look around, is like, right, APU. There it is. And then I put it to the run position. Now here's the thing, with the MD-80, you'll see me like, why can I not put this into start? Well, fuel pumps would help, but there's another fuel pump that's actually needed to turn it on, and the way the MD-80 is programmed, you need to turn on the start pump. So you can see me, I'm looking at all the things and switches I can toggle by pressing and holding in the cockpit, and then it hits me eventually, the start pump. Where is the start pump? Nope, that's the bleed. Yeah, can't start the APU until the start pump is on. So I'm looking over the fuel pump. Ah, there it is. Yep, and there goes the APU. Just holding down the start switch until, what is that, the percent goes into green there. Yep, and APU is on. We can go ahead and flick on the APU gen buses. There they are. Put the AC bus side of auto. Galley power didn't want to go on, so I turned that on later in the flight. I mean, it's not simulated anyways. We don't have any real passengers. So, now I'm thinking about lights. Turn the APU bleed on. Put on the pitot heat. Now I'm thinking about lights. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, as you can see, that ignition system is not simulated. I mean, and I'm trying to remember, okay, where are the passenger lights and the exterior lights? Because normally I'm used to the 737, the A320, all those switches are overhead. Meanwhile, the MD-80 is rather old school with a lot of steam gauges, as you can see. And the light panel for the exterior lights are in front of the co-pilot, literally in front of the co-pilot. So, and quick jump, there we go. Okay, quick editing here. I turn on the windshield heat, and those right there are the exterior lights. So we'll go ahead and put the position lights on, the nav lights, and the anti-collision beacon on. And I forget what I do from here. For some reason, iMovie only wants to put out 15 to 20 minute videos onto YouTube. So I'm just gonna be like doing random jump cuts around here. Another problem with the MD-80 are the fasten seatbelt signs and no smoking signs. I gave up on the no smoking sign. Normally I could get like 3 swipes and it would turn on. You can see I just tried repeatedly, and I did get it on, and well, I was spamming too much and it turned off. So probably just heard the ding there. If you heard the ding, it went on and then went off. Yeah, so at this point I was like, alright, I'll just give up on it. And then I went on to thinking, right, how do I start the engines? You know what, let's just make sure our flight plan is okay. So I just quickly went in, and because we put all that route stuff into the map screen before we load it into the MD-80 here, you can see once I press the legs, there we go, that everything is in there, and I mistakenly just thought, okay, yep, I am set for runway 18 right. I know I'm taking off runway 23. I'm not going to take that SID, so because it wasn't in my flight plan from SimBrief. So I went execute there to activate the departure. I'm going for the ILS 18 right. And I was like, oh, cool, there's SeaWorld. That's the star I need, because that's my flight plan. Let's make sure there's nothing else I can choose from. Alright, let's click SeaWorld, and oh no, invalid entry. Well, eventually I just accepted just the ILS 8 right, and it worked a-okay for the most part, but it would have helped if I investigated why I could not take SeaWorld a little bit, into the FMS here. So, and jump cut, there we go. Okay, and now we're just gonna look for any discontinuities, which there was one. I should have gone off to Sky Vector or something just to make sure I was set up correctly, but I wasn't. I was being rushed through myself. So let's see, next I probably just messed around trying to set up the autopilot. Yep, no messing around with the FMS. Alright, autopilot. Nope. Nah, it's not the autopilot. I was messing around with the co-pilot's FMS here. Let's jump to setting up the autopilot and eventually getting engines to run. Jump cup. Alright. Yep, so, okay, so I actually turned, yeah, I started working down that list right there. So I just turned on, you saw me turn on the electric hydraulic pumps. And now I'm going, okay, right, I need to figure out how I'm going to start these engines. Where are the start switches? Let's do another jump cut here and save time. Boom, alright, yep, there they are right there. Simply remove the guard and just tap and hold. Unfortunately, the way it's set up in the MD-80 on the iPad here, you can't really see the engine gauges, so you just hold it for as long as you think you need to, and then throw on the fuel, and it just magically works almost instantaneously, which, as we all know, is not one-to-one. It's not symmetric to real life. So you can see I'm just waiting for... It's the same process for engine 2. And I'm like, alright, yeah, that's a good start. Let's go ahead and start engine 2. Yep, get that guard out of the way. Come on. And press and hold. I think I held this one much shorter than engine 1 on the left engine. And throw fuel in. Looking at the engine gauges, alright, the left engine's stable, so while we wait for the right engine to come on, let's go ahead and click on the generators, turn off the left side generator from the APU, turn on our air bleeds, quick peek at the engine monitor there. Before I was like, yeah, I might want to turn it on, let's just make sure it's stable. Okay, it's stable. And there we go, let's flick that on, and then we can turn off the APU, turn on the generator, turn off the APU bleed, turn off the APU generators, and turn off the APU, there we go, which spools down comically fast. Ignition system off, even though it's not simulated. Quick check on the overhead panel, just making, because I'm pretty sure there's pressurization, there is, but you can't manipulate it. I actually forgot to turn on the packs. I did that halfway through the flight, so I think I'll just cut right here to push back. So jump cut, and we're setting up the autopilot. So SimBrief told me, hey, climb up to 360, flight level 360. So I just quickly got that in as close as I could, turn on the flight director, and I made sure we were on nav track, so mess around. There's the flight director on. And as you can see, it's auto throttle system off, wing level, and a pitch. So I quickly just put in runway heading on the heading knob here, I think, or I changed to auto throttle. I don't know which. There you go. I pressed FMS, and then you can see there it changed from wing level to nav track. And then I looked at the mode, and I was like, what else can I do? Oh, pushback, yes. So I was thinking pushback left meant nose left. So if I'm looking forward, my nose would go left. Turns out that wasn't true. I'll cut here in a second. Like, yeah, I hope left is okay. And jump cut. Alright, so I had to do 2 left pushbacks because left means tail left, not nose left. So quickly setting up the takeoff trim there, manipulating the flaps handle, trying to get flaps 11. Eventually I decided, you know what, I'm kind of heavy. Let's go for flaps 15 on our taxi roll. Just looking at the autopilot there, making sure everything's set. Runway heading is in the heading bug. I have 250 center. I was like, alright, time to taxi here. So we start taxiing. And then turn auto brake to take off. Arm the speed brakes. Take the brake off, and away we go. It's a lot easier. I cheated a little bit. It's a lot easier to taxi outside the MD-80 just because of how small the windows are. You really can't have much camera control in the MD-80, that is. I wish you could move the camera up a bit so you can see more directly in front of you. While we taxi out here, I just want to quickly talk about my thoughts on Flight Sim 2020, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I, for one, do not recommend getting it. You have the absolute right to disregard what I'm saying and buy it anyways. But my problem with Flight Simulator is that the textures of the cockpit, they're a little bit too game-like, too cartoony, if you know what I mean. I'm really not doing a great job describing it here, but if you compare the cockpit models between X-Plane-10 to Flight Sim 2020, yes, you get a little bit more realistic lighting effects, less jagged edges in the cockpits in Flight Sim 2020, but the displays, the gauges, they look, to me at least, they look more realistic in X-Plane-11. And to be honest, the whole idea of Flight Sim 2020 having Bing images, ground effects, like actual buildings and all that, yeah, it's cool, but I can have Bing images via Ortho XP and a higher quality mesh from AL Pilot X, HD mesh V4 and USG mesh. I haven't done a Western flight, I think, on the channel. I gotta do that when I get back home during Christmas break. I'll do that. But in my opinion, the only reason I would get Flight Sim 2020 is for the terrain. And when I'm flying at 3,500 feet half the time, I'd rather have a better cockpit to look at. So, lining up here on runway 23 at Norfolk. Once we get lined up, we'll do a jump cut because we don't need to look at myself playing on with lights and all that. So, hello Gracie. How nice of you to visit me. Don't fall off the bed, silly dog. Anyways, here we are lined up, 1, 2, 3, and jump cut. There we go. Halfway throttle, because those engine gauges are really hard to see. Alright, looks like we're stabilized there. Let's go, full power. And away we roll. There is no way to calculate V1 with the standard X-Plane-11 FMS, FMC, whatever you want to call it, make do. I don't know what McDonnell Douglas calls their flight computers. So I was aiming for right around like 140, 142. As you can see, I rotated and we're just getting up. And then it hit me. Wait a minute, I need to pitch up to like 15 degrees here, so. Turning off the landing lights just to reduce drag, because the one of the wings actually deploy out, so. Climbing on up, and then a little overspeed warning right there, so I brought the flaps all the way up. And then reduced the trim, or increased it rather. Still going fairly slow for bringing the flaps up. I probably could have left them at flaps 11. And then I started my turn at around 1,500 feet. And threw the autopilot on and let the autopilot take away. And another problem that I have with the MD-80 and X-Plane-10 mobile, the auto throttle, you got to toggle it initially. As you can see, it is on and it should be running, and I'm like, okay, well, auto throttle should eventually stop the throttles at 250, and as autopilot just casually brings us en route. You can see I'm decreasing our vertical speed there so we can actually gain some speed, because I felt like we were going to stall out as we climbed higher in altitude. There we go, through the overcast layer there, or ground layer there. As you can see, I finally realized, hey, ATS says off, so I press IAS speed, I think it's what that button is. Speed select. Yeah, SPD, SGL speed select. I think that's the button pilots would use in real life, IRL, you know. I think there's another button, IAS MCH. It's right next to the FMS button. So as you can see, a quick fix. That's where you broke 250 knots, turn the auto throttle off and back on. So again, we're going up to flight level 360 today. And I'll just, I'll shut up now and do some jump cuts to the cruise portion until we hit top of descent. So enjoy your flight, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, here we are, about an hour and 6 minutes into the flight. Go ahead and set maximum altitude for our ILS capture point at 2200. And at this point, I was going off SimBrief's data. I was matching the speed that SimBrief wanted me going at 477 knots across the ground. And so I pretty much figured that by the time that both SimBrief and the distance that SimBrief was giving me to our ILS capture point for 1-8 right at MCO at Orlando International, McCarran International, I figured a 1,000 foot per minute descent profile would work. I would have used VNav, but there is no straightforward way of setting up a VNav profile from program to flight. When you're punching everything into your FMS, double checking everything out there. I'm not sure if I'll show it or not, but later in the flight I figured out that if you press the direct to or direct index button on the MD-80's FMC, I'm not sure if this works on the 737 or any aircraft for that matter, but if you press that button, the direct to or direct index, I can't remember what it says, and then select the altitude that you want, the waypoint. So in this case, I think it was tough at 2,200 feet. It would have self-programmed a descent profile to be at 2,200 at that given waypoint, which I discovered a little bit too late into the flight. Would have been nice to have used right about now, but hey, whatever. We'll cut to the beginning of our descent. You know, when I press vertical speed, and then we'll cut to the madness, I guess. So. Alright, as you see, I just pressed vertical speed there, and throttles are coming down, and we are starting our slow descent, which will turn very hectic very, very soon. Right, quick check in the map, looking alright. Yeah, we're at OMN. This seems to be going pretty smooth, so let's just enjoy the normal part of our descent here. Alright, so after those few shots, I realized that we were going left and right a lot, and then I looked at the map screen, and I was like, oh no. I was like, alright, well, time to slow down really quickly. So I just whacked the auto throttle down to 115, and I was like, sound the alarm, emergency dive. Negative 2,400 feet per minute, 2,400 feet per minute. Speed brakes all the way out, which we would never do in real life, but who cares? It's a simulator / game. And I was like, alright, well, we should descend now. And then I was like, wait a minute. my heading was 187. I got a vector. To save some time. So I fumbled around here a little bit. I was like, okay, well, I can't really pull the heading knob out. It's a green toggle switch, means I should just be able to tap it, and it should switch to heading mode. And eventually I figured out if you press FMS, it'll put you into wing level, and then you press that green button there, and it would be pulled out, air quotes, and we're going to heading mode, and we could vector ourselves around. At this point I was like, alright, I gotta do some loops going down. And I was like, alright, well, there we go. I figured it out. There we go. We're now in heading select after pressing FMS, went to wing level, tapped it again, and we're heading mode here. I was like, alright, yeah, I need to start descending really fast here. So, went up to, what was that, 33? This preview screen is not the greatest. Yeah, it looks like 3,300 feet per minute down. And I was like, you know what? Let's bump this up to 4,000 and continue vectoring ourselves using heading, going round and round and round. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm heading out to the Atlantic. I went too far, right? Well, let's just keep our heading on a loop. And I was like, alright, well, maybe not. Maybe I'm just crazy. Click on that, I was like, oh, that's the wrong runway. Maybe it's this one. Nope, that's 17. I need to be there. Oh, crud. Anyways, let's just keep descending. You know, I was like, wait, no, maybe the map flipped around. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, yeah, the map's not flipped. So at this point, I was just like, okay, well, guess I'll just have to keep going in a circle here and keep on descending, and I'll just jump to when I'm actually on my downwind leg, right? Downwind, crosswind, base, crosswind, downwind, base turn, final. Yeah, crosswind. I'll call it back to the crosswind. I mean downwind. God, I'm an idiot. Anyways, alright, here we go. So, direct intercept. Yes, that's the button I was talking about earlier. I pressed that, and you can see I'm like, alright, well, I need to get rid of this waypoint here. I need to go direct hammy. And as you can see there, I just pressed that direct to that 2200, and I was like, wait a minute, well, that's kind of cool. It's like, that's like VNav. So I set that up by accident. Stumbled across it, I guess. It's a better term. Email from my school being like, hey, here's an update on the COVID response we're doing. I was like, yeah, no, I gotta land this plane, so. Approaching knobs here, eventually it'll turn over to Earth J. And there we go. Now we're turning towards Hammy. This is our upwind. No, I keep doing this. Downwind, downwind, downwind. As you take off, and then you make your left or right onto your crosswind, and then you make your left or right onto your downwind, and then you turn base, and then you turn final. Downwind. We're turning downwind for runway 18 right. And at this point, I was like, oh, maybe I want to put out flaps, and I was like, yeah, I'll just stick with slats. So that's the first notch with the lever. It indicates 0 degrees, but there is 0 degrees on the MD-80. Had a quick look outside, trying to figure out where the airport is, because it should be off to my left-hand side here. Looking at the map screen, I was like, maybe not. Maybe not. Let's just, because we're going so slow here, we're at 240 knots. I'm just gonna do a quick cut here to vectoring myself around. Didn't miss much. I was just messing around with the FMCs a little bit, seeing if I could fix something, make this descent a little bit easier for myself. And at this point, I was like, yeah, I got it. It's like, oh look, there's the airport. You can see some online traffic there and taxiing to the gates. You can see 1-8 right on the far side there. Got the middle marker going. I was like, oh, please be quiet. I'm not even near the middle marker. What do you mean? Be quiet. And then I don't know what that I is. That was annoying as well. I was like, alright, well, just waiting for Hammy to show up here on my map screen. Got the middle markers barking at me again. I was like, no, ILS, please, be quiet. And then eventually it comes into view. I look at the magenta flight path line that's on the map screen, and it eventually just all hits me at once. I'm like, maybe I should start vectoring. And then I look at that, I'm like, that is a pain in the butt final, because that's an acute angle right there. That is far less than a 90-degree turn, which is unacceptable. Optimally, you would want like a 125-degree turn, or sorry, excuse me, 135-degree turn. So 90 plus 45 onto your final. So I set myself up to go pretty much parallel away from the runway, and then I was like, yeah, we'll just turn away, and then once our heading line matches up with Hammy and Tough, that's when I'll turn back. As you can see, I'm just looking behind me going, I hope I can make it down in one piece. So I'll cut back to when we are no, I'll keep going. I'll cut back to when I'm starting up the ILS on the autopilot. Quick adjustment of the heading there. As you can see, I just pressed VOR LOC, and I was like, wait a minute, what happens if I press ILS? And ILS is what we need. However, the auto land system in the MD-80 works, I don't know, maybe 10% of the time. Every time I've used it, I've always gotten established on final, and then about like 0.2 of a nautical mile out from landing, the plane just starts porpoising. I don't know why. It's in the code. I don't know how to fix it either, so I just take over manually, even if there's like 3-knot crosswind or something, which as of right now, winds are not programmed properly to MMO. Not entirely sure why that is. We have call signs, but we can't like pronounce them over interactive radio. So in terms of the mobile sector, Infinite Flight has God's perks, and X-Plane's God's perks. So there we go, captured the localizer, and then I noticed that we are descending. I was like, alright, yep, that's okay. Everything's a-okay. And then I realized, well, wait a minute. Why does it look like we are starting to ascend a little bit here? So I start slowing down, put in flaps 15 here. And the gears down, put the landing lights on. Everything's a-okay, looking bang on straight, looking bang on good. And then it just drops. It's like, alright, glide slope is tracking, and I realized, well, wait a minute, if it just dropped like that, it didn't actually capture, that means we're gonna porpoise. Right? And then I noticed that the autopilot trim light was on, so the plane could not pitch it down any further. So I slowed the aircraft down, put out flaps 28. Caution. And I was like, well, we're still going way too nose down, so that means we're gonna porpoise. So I got ourselves back on glide, and I'm gonna hand fly it in. So I'm gonna stop talking now and just let the video explain itself.
Light slow. Light slow. Minimums.
$500. 400. 300. 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
So that landing was floaty, except for, and it was also interesting because of that 7-4 behind me. That was, I guess that's what we get for massive multiplayer and a lot of people not taking flight simulations seriously, unless you're you're on VATSIM or Flight Edge. And as we taxi back to a gate here, quickly checking left and right, make sure we're not impeding on any traffic as we cross 18 left. We'll talk about Flight Sim 2020 again. So my deal with Flight Sim 2020 is it looks real. Like Microsoft, they tried making it look real, but they didn't try hard enough while trying way too hard at the same time, if that makes any sense. It just looks cartoony. Everything, from the cockpit to ground. And like I said, with X-Plane-10, yes, it's, 5 years old, 6 years old now? But the payware from X-Plane, the store.xplane.org, the org store, as most of us call it, the payware, even some mods like the Zebo. Yeah, that's a free rare mod that you attach onto the stock 737, and the in-cockpit textures are phenomenal. Like, for example, my laptop, which unfortunately I'm gonna have to go back to recording to as I go back to school August 29th, so that means I can't bring my PC with me. I'm choosing not to bring my PC with me. It's only got a 940 MX in there. It's got 4 gigabytes of memory, and it barely renders the Zebo 737 at 15 frames. I can't even fly the X-Class ERJ family. It also hurts my frame rate no matter what I'm doing. If I'm doing an NVEC encoding recording or X264, and that's using the processor, which no matter what I do, the processor is always going full loop on it. It's an i7-7200U. It's a dual core processor. It does what it needs to do, but it sucks. I recently upgraded my laptop to M.2 NVMe, so I took out the old 5700 RPM hard disk on there, and I put in an M.2 card. Thing boots up super fast now. It took like 5 to 10 minutes to boot before. I was like, oh god, this is only 3 years old. I don't want to have to waste more money to get a new laptop. And then I realized, for $120 I can try M.2. Threw that in there, cloned my hard disk over. I had a little bit of an interesting situation there. Cloning. Didn't really work out for me, so I had to recover it from a USB stick. And now it boots up in like 12 seconds. So. And I had my 250 gigabyte SSD. Had a problem with that from my original PC build that didn't work out. So I threw that in there. So now I came from 1 terabyte to 1 terabyte and 256 gigabytes. So that was interesting. Anyways, a little tangent there. The textures of the cockpits, which you primarily, and the aircraft itself, the skins, the liveries, the clouds, all of that. The clouds are actually getting reworked in X-Plane-10, 11.5. So it'll be interesting to see how the weather engine changes. Also, aside from cockpit textures and cloud textures in X-Plane, the ground textures you can work on. It takes a lot. I mean, a lot of work to do to get ortho to work properly, to get every single mesh file from Autopilot X, that's ISHI Mesh 4 and UHD Mesh V4. But my god, once you get that working, it runs great. On my gaming PC, I only use Autopilot X's ISHI Mesh 4. I thought about going over to ortho, and I was like, I don't think so. For Flight Sim 2020, the UI is a little bit too complex as well for me. That's just me complaining a little bit, but if I had a choice between something I'm going to look at that has phenomenal graphics that I'm looking at all the time, meaning the cockpit, the plane, the clouds, and distant scenery, X-Plane-10 with payware aircraft or even really good mods like the Zebo does the job extremely, and I mean extremely well. And then you have Flight Sim 2020, and the graphics engine behind that is, I don't know, they just made everything look cartoony. Ooh, it's got Bing images for ground terrain. Guess what? Ortho does the same thing, and it makes it look real instead of cartoony. I mean, yeah, you get more realistic buildings, kind of, sort of. But that's the only thing Flight Sim's got going for it. So I'm not going to buy it, and I'm not going to recommend it. And with that, Aircraft is all shut down. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ivy Peace Hands. Drop a like, comment, suggest anything, subscribe maybe. And with that, fly safe.